Welcome to Flip Lesson 115 for the 6th grade. Today we're looking at writing percents as fractions. Now this concept is not a new concept. This is actually an old concept. However, what we want to do is we want to take this idea and we want to look at it in connection to mixed number percentages. Right? And how do we actually solve this? Right? So I've actually set this up in the process that we've looked at in the past. Right? To write a percentage as a fraction, right, the first thing you needed to do was put it over 100. Okay? And so we took our percentage here, right, and I put it over 100. But now suddenly we have a mixed number, which is a whole number plus a fraction divided by 100. So it's like a fraction divided by a fraction. And suddenly we're left with something that is difficult to do, especially if you leave it in this form, right? To think about, well, how do you divide a fraction by a fraction? And when you think about it in this way, you're like, okay, I don't know. Until you rewrite it, right? Let's rewrite this so that it looks more like this, right? First of all, I've taken my 33 1/3 and I've changed it into a fraction, so it's not a mixed number anymore, right? So I have 100 over 3, and then of course I have my fraction bar is actually a division sign divided by 100. And now all of a sudden our problem makes a lot more sense, because now we have a fraction divided by really what we would call a fraction, right? As this is how we're going to solve this problem. And suddenly we are able to, right, when we divide by a fraction, in the end we multiply by its reciprocal. And so suddenly we have 100 divided by 3 times 1 over 100. And quickly we can start using our reduce before we multiply. You can say, okay, if I'm going to reduce before I multiply, I'm going to cross out those hundreds because they're going to eliminate each other anyway. And suddenly I got an answer of 1/3. And so my 33 1/3% is very quickly transferred to a fraction. So we have this concept. Let's try it again. So this time we got 40 1/5, right? 40 1/5%. Place it over 100, right? This is what our process should be. But of course, once again, we're left with that mixed number. And even if we were to convert it, right? 40 times 5 is 200, right? So 201 fifths divided by 100. And that, of course, is hard. You just look at that and it's like, wait, that doesn't look right, right? Because you really can't divide a fraction by a fraction. Because in the end, right, once we rewrite this in a way that is easier to read and makes more sense, we realize, okay, to do this, right, which just looks funny, which looks strange, which looks difficult, if we convert it into something that is understandable, which is this, suddenly we have a process that we can follow, that we understand, and we're left with this idea. And just like that, right, we solve this, and suddenly we're left with 201 over 500. And suddenly this 40 1/5% is not that easy of a fraction to begin with, right? But we've used an understandable process to get us there, a familiar process, and we are able to come up with a result that we are looking for, right? So this lesson is all about that process of doing something you know how to do, writing a percent as a fraction, right, by placing over 100. But when you have a fraction over a fraction, what does that really mean? It means this, right? It means this. And this concept is much easier to understand than this concept. All right, here's a sample problem. Go ahead and work through this one as you convert this percentage to a fraction.